basketball. So I'm because I'm a military retiree, I'm pretty much able to
We're going
go
live.
from one place to the other. As long as I got a mask on, nobody bothers me.
Okay.
We're on. Let's go, Noel.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of An Eternity of Basketball, a phrase, of course, taken from a famous Joe Cantada line. And we will be introducing our guest shortly. But for the meantime, my name is Noel Zarate, along with Sid Ventura and Charlie Cuna, same old guys, bringing you all of the memories.
Not too old, not too old.
Not too old. And of course, our guest today, this is the first time we are having a guest from no less than the National Basketball Association, former NBA referee, Jess Thompson, all the way from Korea right now.
Yes, sir.
A big hand. Hey, Jess, before we begin, maybe you want to greet your friends here in the Philippines. You're always here, so I'm sure your friends are watching.
I tell you, Philippines, if I ever retire and just get out of basketball, that's where I'm coming. And Baguio, by the way, I love the weather up there. It's like New York City. But you don't know. Well, I see you so many times there at basketball games. Philippines is my second home.
Oh, great. Actually, you were in the Philippines in 2004 for the first time, but we're going to talk about that a little later on. First, let's get to meet the man, Jess Thompson. I mean, I met you in 2006, actually, Jess, and I stood beside you. I'm taller than you, which is something that surprised me. You're about 5'8", but you ended up becoming one of the referees of the NBA. Take us through that journey when you were starting out.
Well, this is really, actually, it's unusual in my case. I was like 41 when I joined the NBA staff. I had a 22-year U.S. Army career, and I had my last duty station was in New York City. There's an Army base there in Brooklyn, New York, that I was the deputy post commander of that base, and I got involved. I don't know if any of you guys you're basketball people, so you've heard of Rucker Park up in New York City.
Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I got connected with some guys there in New York, and I got to work basketball up in Rucker Park. I remember very clearly Tiny Archibald was one of the guys that were playing when I said, what? Okay. But anyway, I wound up working basketball on the weekends at Rucker Park. And it was during that time, there were only, I think, 32 referees in the NBA and only 4 African Americans, four minorities. And so the NBA was kind of on the lookout for getting more minority referees because there's so many minority players playing. So my working up at the Rucker Park and making friends with some of the players, and as I say, I mentioned Tiny Archibald and some of the other guys that I knew up there. When it came time for me to get out of the Army, the opportunity opened up, and I got a chance to join the NBA staff, and so I did. I took my Army uniform off in July of 1980, and I put on an NBA referee shirt in September that same year. There's some more story, little story behind it. That's basically how I got introduced to the NBA.
Jess, you mentioned you officiated at Rucker Park. Were you able to watch the GOAT, Earl the Goat Manigault play there?
I refereed him.
Wow.
Let me tell you something about Rucker Park, guys. Because I've been in and out of Philippines so much, like anywhere you go in a barangay in the Philippines, you're going to find a basketball court and people watching basketball. Well, Rucker Park is the barangay of Manhattan, and that's where people go to watch basketball. See, because a lot of times going to Madison Square Garden, nobody could afford the pay. It was a big price to go and watch the games. But all those pros came. If you were a pro basketball player anywhere in the United States, you had to come to Rucker Park to prove yourself, because there they didn't take any prisoners. They didn't take any. Go and those guys. Manny. I can just name so many guys that played in Rucker. In the summertime, like May or June, when school was going to be out, you see some of the guys that probably were strung out on different kinds of reasons and not so. They start cleaning themselves up because they knew the pros and the college guys were coming in town. And you could pick 5 any guys that lived in Manhattan, and they cleaned up. They could play the game of basketball, guys. I saw GOAT. Yeah, I saw GOAT. There's a guy named Helicopter. There's a guy named Larry Fogel. I refereed in that park from 1977, right on until I went into the NBA. That's when I saw them all. I saw them all. You name them, I saw them.
Wow.
Was being a referee part of your life goal when you were in the military?
I had no idea about refereeing basketball. It was just a sideline for me. And what happened was, as I said, I had a 22-year military career, and that military base was in New York City. And I connected with some friends in New York. And you ever heard of the guy named Willis Reed?
Of course.
Willis Reed was a very famous New York Knicks basketball player. He wound up becoming the coach of New York Knicks.
Yeah.
And
New York Knicks legend.
Willis, one season brought the New York Knicks over to my base, and they ran their training camp, and I refereed some of their games. And that was the kind of connection to get into the NBA. I had been up to Rucker Park, but I refereed some of the games during the Knicks training camp. And Willis asked me what I was going to do when I got out of the Army, and I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm going to look to be a corporate helicopter pilot for some corporation." He said, "Well, you're refereeing our games. Why don't you try to get in the NBA?" I said, "How much money they make? What's the starting salary?" And when he told me what the starting salary was, I said, my eyes just went bad. I couldn't pass the flight physical anymore. That was kind of the way that kind of got me introduced into refereeing. But I'd refereed a lot of games around New York City and in the area, and I wasn't a bad referee. So that you had to have some talent. You had to be good going in. You got better real quick, or you didn't have a job. That's just it.
So you started out in the NBA in 1979, but during the time I think the NBA was trying to do the three-man officiating rotation. But then in I think it was at the end of the 1979 season when they said, no, let's go back to the two-man rotation. And you and I think Bernie Fryer, was it Dick Schaefer? I mean, 10 of you were unceremoniously dismissed from the NBA right from the onset. Tell me about that time.
Well, the general managers, now this is only hearsay. I don't know for sure because I wasn't at those meetings, but the GMs, there was the money, they had an increase in money and insurance and all the other stuff, and bringing on that third person was a financial thing. So the board of governors didn't approve it. So they did it part, but what happened was now there's a G League and the D League. Well, the G League because Gatorade pays the money now, but we had a Continental League back then. Yeah. And so it was between the Continental League and they had and the old Eastern League in the Pennsylvania area of the United States. They had pro basketball leagues then, and we started refereeing part-time in those games, and then those guys were in the Eastern League and in the semi-pro leagues. That's the people that got the shot, the opportunity to try to get into the NBA. But the money thing was the big thing that I understood why it didn't go in 79, but 78 and 79. But in 80, I guess the powers that be decided, okay, we need to do this, and that's I don't know the inwards and outs, but the thing I understood was that it was a money thing initially.
Jess, I'm curious to ask you, at the time when you entered the NBA as a referee, what were the qualifications to be an NBA referee? What's the criteria, and what did you have to go through, a job interview or some sort of physical exam? I mean, what did you have to be to become an NBA referee?
There wasn't the big thing. Okay, I can only speak for myself. I had been observed by. I'm going to throw some names at you that you guys will. You ever heard of a guy named Lee Jones?
Yes, he came to the Philippines before.
Lee Jones and Jimmy Capers. In fact, they came to the Philippines and refereed Jaworski's games.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I remember that.
This Patriota game. Yeah.
Jimmy Capers' son is one of the top referees in the NBA right now. But anyway, those guys observed me. At that time, they didn't have a training program, no progression. If the NBA found out that, like they would come to the Rucker Park and they'd see a guy, well, that guy or that woman, at that time they really weren't looking at a lot of women, but guys, if that guy looked pretty good refereeing pro basketball in the Rucker, then they would assign people to come and watch him, and then they started the Pro-Am League. Did you ever hear of the Pro-Am League?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well
Yes.
then if the NBA was interested in you, they would see that you got in the Pro-Am, and they would see, okay, we're going to send somebody to observe you, and that person observing you would make reports and send them to the NBA, and then if you're lucky, you got invited to a training camp. But that was the only progression at that time, just the Pro-Am and maybe the semi-pro league, and somebody observing you and recommendations. That's it. But you had to have some experience refereeing too. You had, I refereed college basketball, Division I basketball.
Mm-hmm.
A funny story about that later on, if you want to hear it. But Mike Krzyzewski, Duke, I refereed Army basketball. He played at West Point. That was a funny story too. But that's something later on.
No, go ahead if you want to tell it now.
Yeah, you can tell it. You can tell it right now.
He played for
That's
Bobby Knight,
that's what
right?
we're here for.
Well, I was in the Army. Like I said, I was Army officer, but I refereed college basketball. And one day I got a call. This friend of mine said, "Hey, Jess, can you go with me referee a game in the afternoon?" I was kind of the boss of the base. I said, "Sure, I can go." So we drove up to West Point. Oh, West Point! I was in uniform now. I'd come right from the base. He picked me up, and we drove up upstate New York, and we went to West Point. Well, Frank Layton was coaching Niagara. Frank Layton later on became Utah's coach.
Yeah,
That's right.
And so they killed West Point. West Point didn't have a very good team. So at the end of the game, I'm trying to think. It was Bobby Knight. I think it was Bobby Knight, or maybe it was one of his assistants. Somebody came up in the dressing room, and they were going up one side of us and down the other. About, you guys stink. You guys blah blah blah. Well, I'm at that time my rank was a captain. I was a captain. I retired as lieutenant colonel, but I was a captain at that time. And he said, "You guys think you can take advantage of us? You come up here just because we're military people, and you da 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 da." And the guy who I was refereeing knew that I was in the Army. He didn't say anything. He looked at me, and I just, okay. So as this guy was going up and down, just tearing us apart, I reached in my locker. I taken a shower, and I started putting on my uniform. He looked at me. I pulled out my shirt. I put my shirt on. I put my pants on. I tied my tie. And he said, "Are you in the Army?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll be right back." I said, "Okay." So he came back with a lieutenant. And by that time I had on my blouse and everything, and he says, "Sir, we just had a little question about the game." I said, "Oh yeah?" "What's your question?" "Nothing, sir. Everything's okay. You guys want anything to drink?" It was funny. I mean, you would have had to been there to see his face as I started taking my uniform out and putting it on here. His eyes got bigger and bigger. Like, "Oh." So, "You better be in the Army." I said, "You better bring somebody back higher ranking a captain." It was funny. Funny story.
Fantastic. So now you're now in the NBA in 1980. You come back, right? So those guys that I mentioned earlier, you all came back to the NBA eventually. So what was the league like? What was the atmosphere like during that time, 1980? It wasn't very popular at the time. You still had a lot of transition going on in the NBA.
Well, again, here, I'm a rookie, okay? And rookies are like anybody that's new on a job. You don't have a whole lot. You keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. And so anything that I saw or heard or observed, I had to, if I wanted to get a truth about it, I'd have to ask a veteran, and that was getting that veteran's opinion. So I really didn't, I saw things that were going on and things that were happening, but mostly I was keeping my mouth shut and learning how to referee and listen to how to referee pro basketball. There's a difference between refereeing at that time, refereeing amateur basketball and pro basketball. You had to learn how to referee. For instance, and just one little instance, Dr. J, playing with the Philadelphia 76ers. True story. My second year in the league, You ever heard of? Oh, he's dead now. God rest his soul. A guy named Earl Strom, one of the best
course.
referees.
Yes,
Good
yes.
person.
Sure.
Great
Yeah.
referee. Well, for the first
Yeah.
3 years, Earl Strom, I was in Earl Strom's back pocket. I refereed and I learned so much about basketball and men and guys. But anyway, back to the story. Dr. J, if you take a basketball, and this gets back to part of what you were asking me about 1980, you take a basketball and have both feet parallel you don't have a pivot foot. But if you take one step with one foot, then you've established a pivot foot. So if you got both feet parallel together, the ball in your hand, you haven't taken a dribble yet, you don't have a pivot foot. Dr. J, when he'd get on the baseline, he would take the ball and step into his defender. Well, as soon as he stepped into his defender, he had a pivot foot. And what he would do is take that pivot foot and raise it up and go around the guy. He'd beat him. He'd take a step and beat him and take that little twirl and shoot that shot underneath the basket and make the basket. He did it all the time. Well, the first time I saw it, I called a travel.
Okay.
Wrong thing to do. He traveled. So, I mean, the stands went crazy. So at halftime, Earl had gone into the dressing room, and I was walking behind him, and he was standing in the dressing room door with his hands on his hips. He said, "How long you been in the league?" I said, "This is my first year." He said, "How long I been in the league?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "My 18th year." I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "You schmuck? That's Doc's move. You don't call that." Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Now I say that to say this. Now, when I was working college basketball and I saw that move, I called a travel. That was fine. But this is pro basketball. Pro basketball is a business. People came to watch Doc make that move. and no, nobody told me that except Earl. But I tell you one thing, I never called that travel on Doc again as I was in the league. There's certain things. So you had to learn how to referee pro basketball, and you had to learn who was who and what was what. And it's a business, guys. It's a business, and it's the same. I mean, period. If people pay money to come and see those guys play, they make big money, and there's certain things. Then, I don't know about now, but then there's certain things that if a certain player has a certain move, then that's his move, and you better learn it.
Jess, I was going to ask this much later on, but you already brought it up right now with that Dr. J story. Are there such things as superstar calls really in the league, in the NBA?
No.
It's not going to come from you,
no.
huh?
Heavens no. Well, this is the thing. Okay, one of the smartest players even now, and I've ever met in basketball and pro basketball side was Larry Bird. Larry Bird was the most intelligent player so smart. He was way ahead of his time. That being said, Larry would say something like this: "Hey, Jess, or one of the, hey, such and such is happening. So and so is happening. This is going. You gonna take care of it? If you don't, I can." The superstars weren't a problem. They never were a problem. And if they needed to make an adjustment of something we thought they were doing, if we told them, they would make the adjustment. But again, we get back. This is business. This is business, guys. I can't speak after 1992 about what goes on in the NBA. I have a lot of friends still. Dick Bavetta, my friend. We're in Bavetta and I are in touch almost every day. That's my man.
Wow.
But what goes on now, I don't know. But back then, you understood. Bavetta, one of Joey Crawford, top guys. But they knew, if Doc made a little hop and a skip and people come out of the stands and high-five, you go on down the floor and shut up and say, "Hey, that's the way it goes." So you're not going to get me to tell that, "Oh, that's no way."
But, during your career, you've been part of so many great games. One of the games that I actually want to bring up was in November of 1984 in Chicago Stadium. and there was this big hype about this rookie out of North Carolina in his first game, and it just so happened that you were one of the two officials that did.
Oh, you mean the superstar white guy from North Carolina, right? Go ahead. Everybody knows where you're going, Noel.
Number 23 for the Chicago Bulls makes his first appearance in the NBA, and Jess Thompson, you were one of the officials in that game. Take us back to what it was like being in Chicago Stadium at that time.
Well, before I do that, Noel, if you don't mind, can I tell you how I got that game? I got that game. It was a punishment. What happened was, when I was in the NBA, because the NBA is a winter sport in the United States, you have to leave the night of the game because you don't know what the weather's going to be the next day. You have to leave. You as soon as the game is finished, you get a shower. You get out of the gym and you go to whatever transportation you got planned to go to the next city to be there in case. Well, all that being said, I had a brother that lived in Indianapolis, Indiana. I had a game in Indiana on Friday night. And so I decided, because Chicago's only 4 hours from Indianapolis. And I decided, okay, I'm going to stay with my brother and his family overnight. I did. Saturday morning, I got up, 10 inches of snow. Planes, no transportation, everything, airplanes grounded. You couldn't get nothing. So, okay, fine. I got the day off. Ring. Hey, Jess, you got NBA office. Yeah. The referees can't get in and you're already in Chicago. I should have been. And you're already in Chicago. And so you got the game in Chicago. Oh, okay, thanks. Oh, my God.
So what happened?
I wasn't in Chicago. I was supposed to have been in Chicago, but I couldn't tell the NBA office that. Because we called it after every game, right? So their assumption was that I was in Chicago. I wasn't. So I get up Saturday and I said, I gotta get to Chicago. So, God is good, guys. God's take care of old people and fools. I'm in there somewhere. But what happened was I go over to the airport in Indianapolis and there's nothing. I couldn't charter a plane. There's nothing flying. So I rent a car. I come out of the rental car place and doing twheelies in the snow, and there sits right over there Indianapolis State policeman. He saw me. Oh, God. So I pull over. He comes back and he says, "What is your problem?" I said, "Officer, please, may I just show you something?" He said, "Yeah, okay, fine." So I get out of the car, open the trunk, and my NBA uniform is laying in the back in the trunk. I said, I got a game in Chicago. I got an NBA game in Chicago, and I got to get to Chicago. And he says, well, who's playing? I said, I think Chicago's playing the Knicks, but I'm not really sure. I'm not sure. But they were playing Washington Bullets. He said, well, okay, let me tell you something. For 4 tickets, I'll take you to Chicago. I said, for 4? You got it. So now it's only 4-hour drive now. 10 inches is, well, they had started cleaning the snow off the highway. So for 3 hours, I'm behind that guy all the way from Indianapolis, Indiana to the city limits of Chicago. I got in Chicago. Now listen to this. This is a true story. I get in Chicago and I go to Chicago Stadium. I go down in the referee's room, and Michael Jordan's dad is there. And we were sitting there playing cards. And I said, you know what? I better call the NBA office. So I called this guy. His name was Matt Winnick. I said, hey, Matt, I'm just calling to make sure. Didn't you say I got the Bulls game? He said, yeah, but Jets, we were looking all over for you. Where are you? I said, I'm in Chicago. He said, no. I said, here, take this number, call me back. I hung the phone up. He calls me back. Yeah? He said, you really are there. I said, of course I'm there. I lied. So,
well, you were there already.
That's how I got that game.
You just weren't there before that.
Yeah, I was there, but I wasn't where I was supposed to be. The time I was supposed to be there. I said, that's why God just blessed me. So when he called me back, he said, okay, yeah, well, you got the game because the referees can't get in. I said, oh, all right, no problem. But that's a true story. I got that game on a fluke. I wasn't supposed to have it.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, your question was about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What was
Jordan.
the question about the game? I'm sorry.
And Michael, of course, Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Jordan's first
Well,
ever NBA
okay.
game.
This is the thing. The hype was everybody, not everybody. People in basketball knew Michael was coming out. He was hyped, and everybody was expecting great things out of him. But he wasn't the high scorer in that game. A kid named Quentin Daly, high school kid out of Baltimore,
Yeah.
Maryland. Quentin was the high scorer in that game. He got, in fact, they got rid of him next year because he got Michael. But Michael did some things. If you look at the videotape, there's a video of that whole game, Noel. He got some rebounds and blocked some shots and did some stuff. You knew he was going to be. He was going to be great. He had it. And the thing about him, and I said to this day, he had a look in his eye that was a killer instinct. If you think you're going to beat me, you're crazy. You're not going to. No matter what, defense, offense, he just. But in that particular game, he showed flashes of greatness, but he wasn't the high scorer in that. Quentin Daly was the kid that really put it away.
But when you were there, I mean, the atmosphere, you knew that something special was going to happen in that game. But what was your take on the whole? Now, looking back now, several years later, looking back at your role in that game, what did you think?
Well, I would now I got to be careful when I say this because I know people are listening, watching it. They played the Washington Bullets, okay, and the Bullets had a big kid named Jeff Rulin.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff was like
the Bruce brother.
Jeff took no prisoners, and what happened was back in my day, and this is kind of like, okay, if you kind of understand this, the paint area belonged to the big guys. If you drove in the paint, you drove in the paint at your own risk. And me and my guy named Wally Rooney, we had the game. God rest his soul. He just passed away about 2 years ago in Florida too. And Wally and I talked before the game. We said, hey, Jordan is here, and Rulin was a headhunter. You don't duck on Jeff Rulin, and that's what mostly we were conscious of, trying to keep people safe. Because when Rulin wasn't a dirty player, by the way, he's just physical, very physical. But those are the kind of things that we talked about before the game started, and then. When Michael shot his first jump shot, Wally and I looked at each other and said, my God, they didn't have a three-point line back then, but Michael was putting them in. Boom. He's quite a player.
How many other of Jordan's memorable games did you have the pleasure of officiating? Were you able to officiate any of his games during the playoffs against the Pistons or
The Celtics?
I got into 3 playoffs. Not when one with the Bulls, but let me tell you a story about Michael. Michael, I had a game between the Chicago Bulls and the Detroit Pistons. Rick Mahorn. Michael had the ball on the sideline. When the the sidelines, he had the ball, and he fakes Joe Dumars. And Joe Dumars goes up, and Michael goes around him. He goes up to dunk it, and Rick Mahorn catches him right in midair. Catches him, and throws him under the Chicago Bulls bench.
Wow.
Off come all of the Chicago Bulls. Off come all the Detroit Pistons. Now, the highlight of that game was Michael. You're throwing the franchise, and I think Dave. Well, no. What's the name? Who was coaching then? I can't think of the name.
Doug Collins. Doug Collins.
Collins.
Doug Collins.
Doug Collins.
Doug Collins was coaching. Yeah. You were throwing the franchise under the bench, right? People went crazy.
This was a game where Doug Collins got on his back.
Rick Mahorn beat up everybody that came near him. He beat up everybody. Everybody except, what's the big guy that recently got thrown out of Madison Square Garden? What's his
Oakley.
name?
Charles Oakley.
Charles Oakley.
Those are the only two guys. That's the one guy that Mahorn did. Everybody else, if the fight started, after Mahorn grabbed Michael and threw him under the bench and the fight broke out, and Mahorn beat up everybody. I'm getting off the subject now, but because we're talking about Michael. But the thing is, every time a fight would start and Mahorn was, hey, Rick, nobody wanted to fight Mahorn except Oakley.
Oakley wants to fight everybody.
Yeah.
But that particular game, I got fined big time for that game because it was said when Michael faked him and went around him, I was the lead referee. I was right under the basket when it happened. So I called a foul. But like you can imagine, Noel, you brought this up about my height. Now you're talking about Michael Jordan at 6'5", 6'6", something like that. And Mahorn 6'10". I couldn't see around him. I couldn't see really what was going on. And that was another thing that helped bring the third person in, because we just couldn't see those bodies back under the basket going back and forth like they could. But the big thing about that particular play, and you asked me about Michael, he got up, that wasn't hurt, and he went over and sat down on the bench. You guys want to fight? Go ahead and fight. He never got involved. Real gentleman. This superstar, like I said, superstars, when I was refereeing, they could take care of themselves. If they had to do that, if that's what was necessary, they had to do it. But Michael Jordan, with him, he fits into the category of a great player. What's the difference between a good player and a great player? A good player can score 50 or 60 points. A great player can score 50 or 60 points, but you can't score 50 or 60 points on him. And so Michael Jordan, and that's just a few guys for me, fit into that category. You can stop him, but you can't stop him, but can he stop you? On both ends of the court. Good and great. And Michael was one of the first people, this is me in my mind, that fed into that great category player. He can score 50 on you, but you can't score 50 on him. He ain't gonna let you. He won't let you. And there are just a few players with my experience that fit into that category.
Who would be the others?
Let me just switch this for a minute, just because I'm saying that. When I came to the Philippines, Noel, Ginebra had two guys. One of them was Mark Kagia. I can't think of the other guy.
Yeah.
Kagiwa.
Who's the other guy?
JJ Hildebrand.
JJ.
Yeah.
Them two guys, those two guys, they were the truth. They were the truth. Those two guys, in my opinion, when I first saw them, with the right team, they would have had a very long and fruitful NBA career. They were the two toughest I saw together when I saw them with the Never. But I'm digressing now. I'm sorry, but I think about those guys. When I think of good and great players, that my mind goes, every time I look at basketball players in terms of that, I think he's a good player. Yeah, he's a good player. He's a great player. Mm-hmm. And there are just a few great players.
Who would
I'm
be
sorry,
the
guys.
other great players?
Yeah, who would be the other great guys in the NBA during the time that you were officiating?
It's a guy named Sidney Moncrief, played for Milwaukee Bucks.
Milwaukee Bucks.
Great player. There are few good players. Good player. People talk about Charles Barkley. Good player. Charles was not a great player to me. You're talking about my opinion. Good player, not a great player. Larry Bird. Great player. Great player. You tick him off, you got a problem. You make him mad, you got a problem. Talk a lot of trash and could back it up. Right. So when you start, and even before those times, now you remember, guys, I'm 84 years old. There was three guys. A guy named Jerry West. great player. Guy named Elgin Baylor, great player. Guy named Oscar Robertson.
Oscar Robertson. I knew you were going to say
great player. You know, so and they're few and far between. When I put my tag on it, can you stop him? But can he stop you?
Mm-hmm.
And you start cutting it back. I'm old school. Yeah, Bill Russell, good player, even great player. But I love Wilt. I'm prejudiced. I kind of know Wilt's family. But, you know, but back then, you know, but there are a lot of the kid that didn't make it to the NBA. He went to Maryland. His name was Len Bias.
Len Bias, oh my gosh.
Woo!
That makes these two guys sit in the well very sad because they're Celtic fans.
Really good.
I refereed him. That guy was going to be something. That guy. So you could just go on and on and on. But so some good players and some great players. Yeah.
But while we're on that, Jess, you know, because we talked about Michael Jordan, of course, he's the talk of the town lately because of that series on Netflix. But you were officiating in an era where some of our favorites, you know, our generation, Sid, Noel, I, and a lot of the fans who watch our show, some of the greats. You mentioned Barkley. You had guys like Bernard King, Isaiah Thomas, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Dominic Wilkins, all these guys. Could you tell us any particular stories about them? How would they complain? Were they complainers? Were they whiners? Were they nice guys? You know, we just want to know what kind of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who I think is the greatest player of all time, what kind of a person was he? What kind of a player was he? I mean, you know, things like that. Those are things I'm sure people would like to hear.
This is the thing now. You're asking me about my time and my experience with him.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
First and foremost, the NBA didn't allow any fraternization between players and referees.
Okay.
Like if I walked into the airport and there was the NBA at that time they didn't have their own team, didn't have their own planes. They flew commercial, and if they were getting on an airplane that I was getting on, I usually got off. I would take another flight. We just couldn't fraternize. We couldn't fraternize. But Larry Bird and I'm a great reader. I always like to read, and Larry and I would read a lot, and we would walk through the airport and we'd speak to each other, and as we walked by, you know, like the old cloak and dagger, he'd give me a book and I give him a book. We keep walking. We wouldn't talk. But I get back to try to address your question.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the guys that you mentioned, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Isaiah Thomas, the dirtiest point guard ever. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Those guys, they didn't need an edge. They didn't need an edge. If you played them straight up basketball and you beat them, that's fine. Or they beat you, that's fine. But if somebody was doing something to them, they would tell a referee, hey, you got to take care of this. If you don't take care of it, I'll take care of it. And they would. So by and large, like, okay, there were just a few guys. Say there was a breakaway. The superstars never tried to hurt anybody going up. They let him go, let him score. It was just an unspoken thing, and there was no problem. Now, collectively, and this is me now. Again, I keep emphasizing this is me. Isaiah Thomas and the bad boys were bad boys. Mm-hmm. Isaiah would start a problem and run behind Bill Laimbeer, who would get socked in the mouth by somebody after Isaiah started it. But the superstars weren't a problem for us as referees. In fact, if we were having a problem with somebody, I don't know how many times, Danny Ainge. I love Danny, but Danny was a pain in the butt, and I would go. I say to hey Larry, hey, come on, Larry, you guys need him. I'm getting ready to. I got him, Jess. Don't worry about it. I got him. And they were helpful like that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They had a couple guys. A guy named, God rest his soul, guy named Larry Spriggs. Larry was a top complainer. I said, hey, Cap. He was a captain. I said, hey, Cap, you need Larry? I got him. I got him. That's the way I interacted with the superstars. They never gave you any hard time. They wouldn't give you, or if they did, like again, I go back to Larry Bird. Larry would come and say to me, "Hey Jess, doesn't rule so and so and so and so and so say, how are you going to argue with somebody who's going to quote you rules that you go by?" He would read the rule book. I said, "Larry, you know what? I'll check that out, and I'll tell you what. Next time I see you, I'll let you know." And if it was 2 or 3 games later, doing the shoot around before the game, "Hey, did you check it out?" "Yeah, I did." And so, okay, fine. And those superstar guys, they never gave me any problem.
Uh-huh.
They never really gave me any problem. Just conversely, Danny
How
Ainge.
about the coaches, Jess? How about the coaches? Who were the coaches who got on you, who were riding you all the time? I'm sure there were some of them.
None. And let me tell you why. For me, and I'm getting back to me now. None of the coaches really rode me. I had Cotton Fitzsimmons, who was coaching San Antonio Spurs. I remember this, and he was the first guy that did it. The Spurs were playing terrible. I think they were playing Denver. I'm not really sure who they were playing, but Cotton comes out on the floor, and he gets up close to me, and he says to me real quick, "Jesse, you got to throw me out. You got to throw me out." And he backed up. "What did you say?" He backs up off me, and he starts calling me a whole bunch of bad names. He said, he was trying to motivate his team. But he got close enough to me when he came out on the floor and says, "Jesse, you got to throw me out. You got to throw me out." And he backed up, and he said, "SOB" to me, and I threw him. And he thought that would motivate his team, I guess. I don't know. But coaches, for the most part, for me, they didn't bother me. They didn't. A lot of them, in fact, all of them knew that I had been in the military, and I didn't bother them, and they didn't bother me. And I didn't really have a hard time with any coach. Not really. And the way to do that, and Earl Strom told me, Earl said, "Hey, listen, don't get no phantom whistle." No, and that's how he talked. "Don't have any phantom whistles, if you know what I'm talking about." I think he did that. He said, "Don't blow it. If you don't know it, don't blow it." And
That's a good one.
obviously that worked with some of the coaches, because, or if a guy got hit or pushed or something and I was out of position, and, "Hey, Jess," I said, "Coach, I didn't see it." "Well, to get in position to see it." "Okay." And that was the end of that. But I didn't really have a problem with coaches. None of them.
Jess, we were talking about that big Bulls Pistons fight a few minutes ago. I just wanted to ask you, what was referee's protocol whenever a fight would break out? What's the first thing that you guys had to do? Especially a fight of that magnitude.
You're talking to me now, right? In my experience, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all about you, Jess. It's all about you.
I'm 5 foot nothing. I'm not breaking up any fights, okay? And again, I was telling you about a fight that broke out with Michael Jordan. What Earl Strom and I did, or what we do when a fight breaks out, usually we step back and see who comes off the bench, who's on the floor, and we at least we were only working 2 people until they went to 3. But what would happen is we'd say, "Okay, he came off the bench, he's gone. He came off the bench." Because we didn't have tape then. Only the sports, the TV stations had tape that we could go back and look at the time. We would have to see who came off the floor, who threw what punch, and we had to decide who was going to go right then and there. It's not like the technology that we have now. But that's what we basically would do. Whomever I referee with, I was the only person that was shorter than me when I went in was Ron Garrison. And his dad hired him, but so we just stepped back, and I never got in, but I didn't have to really. It's like, and again, I credit Earl with this. Earl said, "Keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. Watch what happens." You know, if a guy goes and dunks on a player, and he comes back and he talks trash as he's running back up the floor. "Hey man, you got blah, blah, blah." Earl says, "Watch him." So for 2 or 3 plays up and down the floor, you watch and see if there was what happened between that exchange. If they drop it and leave it alone, but we watch for things like that. You know, guys on the foul line holding their trunks, they're talking trash between shots. You pay attention to that, because up and down the floor there might be, or somebody gets pushed. We were very observant of what happened prior to and up to and including what happened with fights. And again, with fights with players, usually the bad actors that's who it involved most all the time, the same guys.
Mhm.
So we really, if whatever team that had a guy that was a bad actor and so we talked about that pregame. Oh, so and so's playing. Hey, these two guys got matchup. Oh, you got a guy who's a defensive specialist. You got a guy who scores. Well, the defensive specialist is going to try to stop the score. So we talked about that during pregame in the dressing room. Again, we didn't have the NBA guys have computers now, and they send them plays and they talk to them before the game. We didn't have that then. That was just us, referees on that. But fights, my experience, one or two. I only had two in my career, and I didn't get in to try to break up any of those, but I knew who was going to get thrown out after it was broken up. So, goodbye.
Just my question to you is, how does the NBA maintain the level of respect between the officials and the coaches and the players and the coaches? Because you've been to Asia, refereeing in Asia is a completely different ball game as opposed to what's happening in the U.S. in the NBA at least.
Great question.
Noel, I want to retire in the Philippines. Why are you doing this?
Just between the three of us.
Chote Reyes. You guys all know Chote Reyes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
I've been in Korea now 20-some years. And FIBA basketball in Asia, as I saw it, was a little more physical than the NBA basketball, physicality, that is. And it's accepted, it's expected. What's a big guy that for years played with the Philippine national team? Big Samoan guy.
Taulava. Asi Taulava.
Asi Talaba. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting back to answering your question now. Asi Talaba, when he would play and Chote was the coach, I'd see them in different countries I might be in when they were playing there. And in maybe the first quarter or two, Asi would have 2 or 3 fouls. And because I would come to the Philippines and I knew PBA basketball, the physicality that was allowed and expected and okayed in some countries are not the same in other countries in Asia that I've been. And Chote Reyes made a statement I read about it in a newspaper where that our guys in the PBA, when they left outside the country and they didn't have PBA officials, they had to learn how to adjust their physicality. Mm-hmm. That being said, and I said I'm kind of going around about because I've been over here and I've watched Asian basketball. Team-wise, player-wise, I always thought that the Philippine national team was as good as anybody else. The shooting, you had 1 or 2 guys could knock it down all the time, but not 3 or 4 or 5 guys. Most guys, Alcy was tough around the perimeter. He could rebound, put it back up, block shots, but move him away out on the free throw line shooting, he wasn't that tough. That being said, okay, other Asian countries, because they weren't as big and rugged as the Philippine team, they had to depend on finesse opposed to physicality. And this is why when I would watch PBA basketball, and Chote Reyes said it, we have to it's too physical. But the FIBA rules allow it. FIBA rules allow it. So I know what the answer is. I just don't know what the answer is. You don't get me in that. I got to come back to the Philippines and live. You get me killed.
All right. So you were a referee until 1992. What made you decide to finally stop being an NBA referee?
Well, I got hurt.
Okay.
I got hurt at an L.A. Laker Denver game. Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson. Oh, was it Magic? Let me think now. Let me think. Because what happened was, oh yeah, there was a shot. Denver guy shot the basketball. I was the lead referee under the basket. Magic rebounded, kicked it out to Michael Cooper on a fast break, and I turned to catch him, and I ruptured my right Achilles. Just boom. It was just
Wow. Okay.
pulled out. I ruptured my Achilles, and I rehabbed. But see, that's the other thing about NBA and basketball players, period, but more especially NBA players. When I was there, people they look like they're not hustling. Those guys can run. They're in shape. I mean, they're in shape. And I ruptured my Achilles, and I couldn't get back to NBA condition. I could still referee amateur basketball. I could run with them, but I couldn't run with the NBA. I went out on disability, and because I got hurt in a game. And what happened was, the Koreans wanted to start a pro basketball league, and I was in the States, and I got hurt. I got hurt on the job, so I was getting paid. So the Koreans approached the NBA about helping them form a league, and they did that, and they came back to Korea and they set it all up, and they said, "Oh, we don't have anybody to train our referees." The NBA said, "We got just a guy for it. They didn't want to pay me anymore. We got just a guy for you." So we negotiated a contract with the Korean KBL, and that's how I came over here. That's why I came over here to Korea. And then 2000, I came over here in 1997, I think. And I'm from 98 to 2004. I trained the basketball referees, and I got fired. And so I came to the Philippines in 2005. And so Perry Martinez, you know him, don't you, Noel?
He's a very good friend of mine. He's my fraternity brother.
Yeah, well, I worked for Perry and the PBA for just a short while, but I liked the Philippines, so I stayed there until 2007 or 8, and then my friend became the supervisor for the KBL and asked me if I'd come back. So I said, "Yeah, I'll come back." So that's how I came back here, and so I've been here ever since. Well, I got hurt.
Jess, you mentioned that you have to be healthy. There's a certain health level that you have to be at to be an NBA referee. Just for the guys who are listening right now, how rigorous is your daily routine and regimen as far as exercising and trying to stay healthy and eating right and all of that? Because they probably think that only the players do that, but the referees have to be in tip-top shape as well.
We had to pass a physical every year. We had to pass a physical. We had to run 2.5 miles every year. That was part of the test. But the other thing is, see, anybody who's listening that wants to be a referee and you want to get at the pro level, you have to remember, if a player gets tired or for whatever reason, all he's got to do is raise his hand and the coach will take him out. Nobody does that with referees. In fact, but wait a minute, I did see this. I saw a PBA game where the referees were substituted. I think Bong Pascual was pulled a referee out in one quarter. I never saw that before. But anyway, get back to answer your question. We had to, during the off season, we had to stay in shape, run, watch our diet. For instance, I had the season would end June or July, depending on the play. June, depending on the play. So July and August was our time to veg out if we wanted to do that. But come September, we had to run at least 3 miles a day, watch our diet. I don't eat fried foods. I don't eat meat. I don't eat pork. I don't eat beef. I never have. But especially when I started refereeing pro basketball, I don't eat fried foods. I don't eat bread, little dairy. Only eat fish, chicken, and sometimes turkey. No fried. I said fried foods. We just had to watch our diet because the thing is, those, as I said before, and I didn't emphasize it enough. You're running up and down the floor with those guys making $6 to $7 million, $60 or $70 million a year. you better be in shape. You have to be in shape. There's no two ways about it. And then if we didn't pass our physical, and we had a summer camp, we called it summer camp, but beginning of the season camp, we come in, we got weighed, we got doctors did physical exam, took blood, we had to take a test and everything, and we didn't pass it. We didn't have a job. Just that simple.
Wow, that's
Got to
great.
be in shape. You got to be in shape, guys. You just have to be.
Yeah.
That's the one requirement that the NBA didn't back up off of. That you and you have health insurance. You get if you had a broken toenail, you could go to the doctor and get it fixed, and the NBA would pay for it. So, really, I'm serious. You know, the insurance program, my family, and it's good. It was great. So, you had to be in shape, and that's what they told you at that time. Remember, guys, there was only 2 referees. They didn't go to 3 referees, and when they go to 3 referees, Noel, you know that
I would think that
I was involved with it. I was
85.
involved with. I was involved, but I forgot what date. But you know, I'm talking about. We did two referees up and down the floor with those guys. You have to be in shape. You got to watch your diet. You have to go to sleep every day. If I had a game, I had to be in bed in the hotel. I had to lie down and have to go to sleep. But I had to lie down from 3 o'clock, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon until it's time to go to the arena. You have to veg. You can't be up and around about. And as I said, in the evening, after the game is over, you got to pack and get out of it and go to the next city. So, I mean, you got to be in shape. You have to be in shape. Drinking and smoking and all that stuff. If you're going to be a pro basketball referee, forget it. You're not going to be around long.
Yeah, Jess, I have another question for you. In your experience in the NBA, what were the toughest arenas to officiate in? And have you ever gotten anything thrown at you?
That's a great question.
Well, not in the arena. Not in the arena. Indiana was kind of tough place for me to referee, but before they had the G League and the summer leagues, there was a pro basketball league in Puerto Rico, and all the NBA referees would go down there in the summertime and referee. That's one of the ways we stayed in shape. Well, in Puerto Rico, I don't know. You know, there was a very famous baseball player called Roberto Clemente. Have you ever heard of him?
Clemente,
of course. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well,
Sports guys
Clemente,
over here.
Clemente, he sponsored a team in a place called Bayamon. Well, guys, let me tell you, Bayamon didn't lose any home games, and if they did, they put chicken wire. Now, this never happened in the NBA. No, to answer your question, I never had any tough time in the NBA. But in the Philippines, they put chicken wire around the arena because the people would throw eggs, and then if the team lost, they would back a van up to the door, and the referees would get in, and that's how we got out of there. Bayamon was it was dangerous. But Indiana was a little difficult for me to referee in. But other arenas, no, I loved Utah. I loved going in Utah, and I loved going into LA. I just didn't have any bad times in any of the arenas.
How about in Denver?
Not even the Boston Garden, where the fans were notorious for.
Let me tell you, somehow or other, I was Larry Bird's boy. Nobody messed with me. I'm serious. I told you, Larry and I used to exchange books, right? I remember one time Kevin McHale didn't like something I had called on him, and he started coming after me. I looked out the corner of my eye. He was coming after me, and Larry just intercepted him. He thinks I didn't see this to this day. Larry intercepted. No. He pushed Kevin off, and they started. I don't know what was going to be. Larry, I was Larry's man. I didn't have any trouble in the Boston Garden. None. Absolutely none.
You know, Jess, you mentioned that Kevin McHale was going after you. I read something just last night, because I was preparing for our interview today, that Kevin McHale was upset because I think Larry Bird had hit a game-tying shot, and you called an offensive foul on Kevin McHale. It's in a book called The Last Banner. It's a Celtics book about the '86 team, the champion team. And so, and Kevin McHale was really rushing to you, and that's probably the incident that you just described.
It probably was. It probably was. It probably was because really, Larry, and I think it was this. I'm from Ohio, but I have a lot of family in Indiana, and I think Larry thought I was from Indiana. I think so. I'm not sure. But somehow or other, he liked me, and I to this day I thank God for it because I had no trouble in Boston Garden. The Don Nelson, he used to coach the Celtics, right?
No, Warriors.
Used to hang out.
He would call me the little S word, you little, and Larry would say, I don't know what, you little, what kind of stuff is that, you little? Larry protected me, and I don't know why. I didn't pay him any money, but I had no trouble in the Boston Garden, absolutely none. And in the Madison Square Garden, no trouble. Come on, guys! I wasn't that bad of a referee either.
But you know how fans can get, right? I mean, even though you made the right call, if it's against their team, they're gonna go berserk sometimes and throw things at the referee.
Well, that's all part of the scenario too. Fans pay to come to watch a game, and the big thing is if they don't start coming towards you, they can say all they want or do it, and actually you don't hear it. You don't pay any attention. You can't hear. You can't have rabbit ears. That's the other thing about. Hey, if any of you guys listen and want to be referees, you're gonna have rabbit ears. It's no job for you. You don't want it. You can't referee and have rabbit ears.
Yeah. Great advice.
And again, I go back to Earl Strom. Earl was my teacher. Earl was my teacher, and that's the other part of. I had a good teacher, and Earl had the respect of all the Red Auerbach. He said, "Who you want on your games, Red? Who you want to work your game?" Earl Strom was number one. They said, "Well, is Earl cheating?" No. Earl threw Red Auerbach out of so many games, but they had mutual respect. And Earl, I said, for the first 3 years I was in the league, I worked with nobody but him, and he told me so many things. I can't even remember some of the things to tell you that he taught me about interacting with players and coaches. I was so lucky.
Jess, was there a specific game that stands out in your NBA career that you were part of and you will never forget?
Wow. It had to be where that little girl sang that song.
That I was about to ask about that. Okay, great.
It had to be. And I got, by the way, guys, I got fined for that.
Okay.
I got fined for appearing on television without permission from the NBA.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, oh yeah. You couldn't appear on. I got my money back, but I got fined for it because that was a rule. You can't. If there was a question, they had a pool referee to talk to the media, and I went out.
Okay.
When I went out and talked, did that thing. I the rule said I had to be fined because I appeared. But that was it.
Wow.
That would have to be the game. That had to be the game.
But just for everyone who's watching to know what we're talking about, it's an incident where a little girl was trying to sing the national anthem, right? And she couldn't continue. She forgot the lyrics, right?
Forgot the song.
And Jess Thompson to the rescue, right? Just like Maurice Cheeks did a few years ago as well.
Yeah.
I was first by the way. Maurice.
Yeah. You're the original. You're the original. So what happened over there? What happened there? She just lost the lyrics?
Yeah, but let me tell you about that. I was refereeing the game with Lee Jones. By the way, Lee Jones and, as I told you, Lee Jones and Jimmy Capers refereed there in the Philippines. But the little girl, she was on the floor, and Lee and I were standing there by the table. And as she walked off the floor, I said, "Lee, I'm going to help her." He said, "You better not. You don't do that." I said, "But we're not going to get the game started, Lee, because everything was just." If you look at that video, you'll see all the guys were standing around, and so when she walked off the floor, and as I said, she looked at her mother, and she looked around, and she looked right at me, and I said, "You want me to help you? I'll go back out there now," and that's what we did. But
Right.
The moral of that story is, for the rest of the season, every time I saw the Lakers, one of them or some of them would say, "You can't referee. You got another career singing, but you can't referee." They were jokingly. I never lived that down for the rest of the season, but they you know.
You're going to be the national news because of that.
You may as well go. You get a singing career because you sure can't referee. But it was.
And I'm sure that little girl remembers you to this day, and she's so thankful that you were there.
She's 40. She's 43 now, and she has 3 kids.
Wow.
That little girl, Cecil B. DeMille, was a very famous Hollywood movie producer.
Yeah.
That's his granddaughter.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was his granddaughter. She sang,
See?
she had sang the national anthem so many times at Lakers game, but she just got a brain block. She just got a brain lock, and she just couldn't remember it.
It happens.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah. But that would be my most memorable, because I got fined. I got in trouble with the NBA office, but I got out.
No, but that's commendable what you did. I mean, you risked the fine to help the little girl, I'm sure.
Well, I didn't think I was going to get fined, but I did.
How about an All-Star game, Jess? I'm sure you did a few All-Star games, of course.
One.
As well.
One.
Which one?
Only one.
Which one?
He's still 87.
Same year as 84.
Oh,
Think
84.
that's
Isaiah Thomas.
Isaiah Thomas, yeah.
Was the
Isaiah Thomas was MVP.
Same year. But see, this is the thing. Back then, unless you after you had to get at least 5-6 years in the league before you start getting into playoffs or get even considered for it. You just didn't happen. Didn't happen. The guys with the most years, they got to work the playoffs. They got to work.
How different? Speaking of the playoffs,
lot of extra money in that, guys. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of extra money.
Yeah. Speaking about the playoffs, just how different is officiating in the playoffs?
Yeah, is there such a thing like a playoff foul?
Regular
like
season, yeah.
Foul?
Yeah. People keep talking about, a playoff foul, a playoff atmosphere, playoff pace. Is there really a difference?
Okay, I'm gonna put something back to you before I comment on that. How different is it for you if one of your loved ones was sick in the hospital, opposed to somebody that wasn't your loved one? And I say that to say this. The playoffs were the culmination of a hard-fought season, and those teams that made the playoffs, it was serious business. They didn't make the playoffs to lose. They didn't come there to lose, and you understood. That's why the veteran referees got to work with the veteran players. It was a second season, and it was serious business. It was serious business. You never saw anybody giggling and smiling and laughing and joking that you might see in a regular season game, before the game or during the shoot around. Playoffs were serious because it involved a lot of things, and it was a serious time. And guys who got selected to referee playoffs, it was an honor. And the players would come up during the shoot around if you were a playoff referee and said, "Hey, good to see you. Glad you made it. Good to see you." Just a little something. Because they understood that we all understood that the playoffs was a big deal. And with that in mind, we acted accordingly. It was like the playoffs were like one of our loved ones were in the hospital. And it wasn't just somebody we knew. It was a big deal.
Any memorable playoff games for you?
No. And I don't mean that facetiously. I didn't get to work, but only one season playoffs.
What season was that, if I may ask?
84.
84.
84 also. Okay. Yeah.
All right, Jess, we're almost out of time here, so I want to just have your final thoughts. There are some people watching this right now probably get inspired by you and want to become a referee also, like yourself. What is your final message to everybody who's watching us right now here on an eternity of basketball?
Well, I've been here in Asia a long time, and I've seen a lot of people, guys who want to be and try to be referees. If you want to be liked, if you're a person that wants to be liked and you want people to like you, this is not a profession for you. And if you make up your mind that if you want to do this, especially at the amateur level, I used to referee for $5 a game. You're not refereeing, learning to referee. If your goal is to move up to the highest level that you can, be humble and say, if hey man, I'm not going to referee for $10. I'm not going to referee $10. Why are you doing it? For what reason? Are you doing it for the money? Then you're doing it for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. Are you asking me my opinion? Mm-hmm. And the big thing and the last thing is pay attention to the veterans. Pay attention to the veterans. One of my dearest friends in the Philippines is a guy named Mario Montel. Any of you guys know Mario?
He's a former PBA referee. Yeah.
He sure was.
Former, that's right.
A great teacher. Pay attention to guys like Mario and Boy Cruz, I think, is he still around?
Yeah, yes, he is. He's like one of their directors already for some of the leagues here.
If you're considering becoming a referee, find someone that has done it. Big Joey, Art. What's Art's last name? Herrera. Those guys, seek those guys out and pick their brains and listen to what they have to tell you, because they have a good message for you. They've done this. They know what they've handled people. And lastly, have fun. Do it for the right reasons. Let's just have fun. And meeting guys like you guys, Noel and really, I'm serious. You know what? No, I recall Noel and I back in Antipolo. How many years ago was that, Noel? We had a call-in show and
2006. I was producing that show.
And I heard some stuff that you told people that I listened to. Oh, I didn't know that, because you learn stuff. If you keep that's the other thing, guys. Referees, I tell this all the time. If a player or a coach starts to want to talk to you, listen. Don't interrupt them. Don't try to, just listen to what they have to say. Listening gets you a whole lot more information than talking. I could go on and on about this. Come to my clinic. I'll tell you.
We could go on talking about the basketball and the NBA forever, but unfortunately we don't have an eternity of time on this show. It's called an eternity of basketball.
Well, I think Noel. I think every time I come to the Philippines, I go to a PBA game. I'm at a PBA game down in Mall of Asia, I think, and I look up in the corner and there's Noel. Man,
Noel's shouting. He's shouting again.
No, I was actually doing the radio commentary in that game when I saw what I saw in there. But
what year was this?
Just last year.
Last year, okay.
Well, do let us know, Jess, when you're coming into town. Yeah. Hopefully when you're allowed to travel again and then the sports are back. Hopefully.
Dominic, Noel, and Norman Black, and Coach Eric. Eric Altamirano, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Those are my four contact people. When I hit the Philippines, I call, hey guys, how you doing? So yeah, okay.
All right, we will see you soon here, Jess. You stay safe over there in Korea. And nighttime has fallen in my place right now. So
thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone watching us on Facebook Live right now. Thanks for joining us as usual. Some of the regular guys are are on, listening to us right now. One of them is your friend, Jess. It's a friend of mine. His name's Joe Fish. You know him. Joe Fish is listening right now.
He's in Singapore now.
Yeah, he is. But he used to be with you in Korea. That's why I
his
met
little
him.
boy. Hey, his little boy. That's my boy. His wife and him just had him. That's my son.
Brother boy, little guy. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.
We'll try to
Thanks a lot, Jess.
All
right. Noel, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys when we get able to fly on an airplane. All right.
Right. You stay over there. You stay safe over in Korea, guys. That was Jess Thompson. Of course, for Sid Ventura and Charlie Cuna, this is Noel Zarate. Nighttime has fallen here in my place, and this has been an eternity of basketball. We'll see you all next time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jess.
Bye bye.